is that a huge amount of what I am talking about here and much more is posted there. You go over on the right-hand column of my website, scroll down under various publishing links, and you'll find links for self-publishing, one of which will include helpful links for writers. There is a treasure trove of information on that, you can find under that link. And if you miss anything here, I guarantee you'll find just about everything and a lot more there. What I'm going to try to do here is stress the things that I think are most important. And this is based on several things. My experience at this is that I started writing nonfiction probably before I was born. But I only started writing fiction, I hate to say late in life, because that kind of puts me in makes me feel old. I started writing fiction in my 50s, and I only started getting serious about it in my late 50s because I was very much concerned about could I really write fiction? Fiction is such a different animal from writing nonfiction, and quite frankly, I was scared. So I waited, and I delayed, and I hesitated, and then circumstances took over. Circumstances were that I was editing a magazine, and the nonprofit decided they wanted to go in a different direction and end the magazine, and I was 59 years old, and I was on the streets in the middle of the worst recession since the Great Depression. At the age of 59, you're not exactly at the top of everybody's hire list. At least I wasn't. So I had it on my bucket list, write a novel. And that had been on my bucket list for decades. And I had dabbled in writing fiction for, during that period of time, and I'd always managed to talk myself out of it. Well, I decided that I would hate myself if I went to my deathbed and never tried. So I gave it a shot, and I made a vow that on my 62nd birthday, that was my deadline, to have my first novel out by my 62nd birthday, which was June 5th, 2011. On June 4th, 2011, at 11 p.m., the last pages of the manuscript were coming out of my printer. When you are a magazine editor, you learn to work on deadlines. So that is about as much of a deadline as you could ever imagine. Anyway, I finished the book. In 17 days later, because I self-published, it was up on Amazon. In 6 weeks, a print edition was out. The book sold well for its first 5 months. That's this book, Hunter. It sold well for its first 5 months. I sold about 4,000 copies in the first 5 months. Then the Amazon editors took a liking to it. They put it in a post-Thanksgiving promotion, and I wound up selling 50,000 copies in 35 days. The book went to #1 in mysteries and thrillers and #4 overall on Amazon. And that was a kick. It was also a Wall Street Journal top 10 fiction ebook. And my wife witnessed all that, and I would be upstairs clicking the sales results, and she would say, "What did you say?" And I said, "I just passed Stephen King. I just passed Lee Child. I just passed Vince Flynn." It was just going on and on and on. It was great. It was very heady days. Anyway, the book's done exceedingly well. The second book in the series, Bad Deeds, I published that. I delayed that way too long. I published that 3 years later, and that's done well too, although nothing like the first book is done. But this is an ongoing series, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. Anyway, that's just a bit about me. The purpose of the talk here today is to help you maximize your chances of attaining sales success, commercial success. I've given talks on how to write thrillers. I've given talks on self-publishing. I've given talks on all kinds of things, but the focus here is how can you make a living at this gig? How can you translate the kind of writing that you do into something that is going to maximize your chances of having significant sales? Marketing, what you have to understand first of all is that marketing, even if you have a traditional publisher, marketing is all on you. If you think your traditional publisher is going to spend zillions of dollars to put you in an end cap and Barnes & Noble and run TV ad, that sort of thing is for James Patterson. Unless your name is James Patterson, I don't think that's going to happen to you. Marketing is an unavoidable thing that all authors must confront if you want to have commercial success, or if you just simply want to have a fairly broad readership. That's the scary news for everybody. What I'm going to show here today, I hope, is going to be encouraging to you because it doesn't have to be scary. There's no, what's the term somebody used earlier today, secret sauce. There's no magic about this. But I think a lot of people, including myself, get things wrong about marketing. And I did for a long time. Short-term gimmicks, chasing trends, saying, oh, what's hot this season? Oh, vampires are hot. I want to write a vampire book. And you write your vampire book, and you find out within a very short period of time that by the time you get the book out, the trend is away from vampires, and it's now into zombies. Oh, now I'm going to get to write zombie books. I'm going to chase the market with zombie books. How about 50 Shades has just come out. Oh my gosh, maybe I can do like a 50 Shades kind of book with vampires in it. Yeah. And you're trying to chase these market trends, and that's all wrong. The good news is that your best chance of success lies in being authentic, in being who you are. How many of you were at this presentation on voice that was in the auditorium just a little while ago? I thought that was a fantastic presentation, and it's going to dovetail beautifully with what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to focus on mainly principles that will endure over time despite trends, despite market trends, despite ever-changing market publishing gimmicks, marketing gimmicks, and all of that. We're not going to be talking about all the gimmickry here because it changes from season to season. You want something that is going to be as valid 5 years from now as it is today, 10 years from now as it is today. And so I'm going to be focusing on that, and I'm going to be doing something a little different. You'll run into people who are in the business of marketing ideas on how to self-publish, on how to market yourself, on all of these things. I pay attention instead to the people who have actually succeeded big time at this. I look not just at what they say, but what they have done. And I try to glean from their example principles that they seem to share in common. And what I want to do here is to focus on those principles that I see are shared in common by super successful people going back to Earl Stanley Gardner, Edgar Rice Burroughs, Nancy Drew, all the way through what we see today. The super successful people. And I figure, okay, maybe I won't be super successful, maybe you won't be super successful, but I'm sure I can learn a lot more about how to be at least marginally successful by paying attention to the people who are really killing it. So that's what we're going to focus on. I want to start with two key elements. The rest of this presentation is going to be teasing out the implications of these two elements. But the two key elements are, number one, if you wish to succeed in the marketplace, you have to craft a highly readable, a well-written book that reflects your authentic self. Every word of that statement is important. Highly readable, that reflects your authentic self. I'm not talking about cashing in on trends. I'm not talking about following marketing gimmicks. Write what you like to read and be yourself. Believe it or not, that sounds like a terribly frightening thing for people who are intimidated by marketing, right? Write what you like to read and be yourself. Does anybody here find that terribly intimidating? I hope not. The second thing is, yes?
Can you do the first one again, after highly readable?
Craft a highly readable book that reflects your authentic self. Now, the second key element to this, which we'll tease out, is to make your book discoverable to people who share your beliefs and worldview. Let me repeat that. The second big element is making your book discoverable to people who share your beliefs and worldview. Your target audience is not some demographic group. Demographics has nothing to do with it. Do you read particular books because you are members of a particular demographic? I am a 43-year-old woman living in Colorado. I have 2.5 children. I have had post-college education. Is that why you pick the books you pick? Nobody picks their books that way. And yet, marketing experts will tell you, oh, well, you've got to position your book to appeal to certain demographics. That's completely bogus. That's completely the wrong way to think about it. I'm going to explain here about appealing to a target audience of people who believe what you believe, who think the way you do, who like the things you like, who share the interests that you have. Now, does that sound particularly intimidating? Going after people who are just like you? Doesn't really intimidate me. And if marketing boils down to writing what you like to write and what you like to read and reaching out to people just like you, that should take an awful lot, I think, of the fear, intimidation, and pressure off of you in terms of what you think marketing is all about. I know what we think marketing is all about. We think of a used car salesman. You know, somebody who's going to buttonhole you, and you think you have to go out and shove your books onto people. Wrong. That's not what this is at all. So I'm going to talk about 10 tips here. The handout goes over some of these, but the 10 tips, think of them rather than tips. Think of them as hurdles. Now, why do I say think of them as hurdles? In any race, think of the Olympics, the hurdles, the guys who are jumping over those things going all the way down the field. Somebody's going to win the race. Somebody's going to be out in front. The other people are going to be somewhere behind. And or maybe some of these people, or a lot of them, are going to trip over hurdles along the way. If you think of these tips as hurdles, then you realize that the challenge is, okay, you may not win the race at the end, even if you clear all the hurdles. However, if you don't clear all the hurdles, you're not going to have a chance of winning the race. The tips that I'm giving you here are elements that I see successful people surmounting in order to achieve success. If you do these things, you will be in qualification, essentially, to be successful commercially. If you don't do these things, or if you do these things badly, I think you are grossly diminishing your chances of being successful. So, the first one is write the best book you can, preferably more than one, ideally in a series. Again, I'm talking about just from a commercial standpoint. If you want to write one great American novel, or one how-to book, or whatever it is, and a standalone, you just have it in you, you want to get it out of you, that's perfectly legitimate, that's perfectly fine. I am saying that to maximize your odds of success commercially over a period of time, from the standpoint of a career, write the best book you can. Write more than one of them. Ideally, connect them in some sort of a series. 90% of success in writing in this business is writing a good book. Now, there are people who write arguably very bad books who achieve some commercial success. We all have our favorites, don't we? However, you look at the long haul, you look at the people who have succeeded over the long haul, they're good writers. By and large, they're very good writers. They have put a great deal of time and effort into mastering writing. Their writing appeals to a target audience. And the target audience, shockingly, seems to have values very similar to those of the author. If you think of the examples, if you think of super successful writers. I don't think J.K. Rowling, sitting in that little diner, scrawling, probably with a baby in her lap, was thinking in terms of all kinds of marketing gimmicks when she was writing Harry Potter. She wrote what she wanted to write. She had this fantasy, she had talent. There's undeniable talent. She is a fantastic storyteller. Combined a fantastic storytelling with an authentic voice, writing about what she wanted to write about, and she found that there were, to her shock and surprise and delight, because she's a billionaire now, she found that there are gazillions of people who share her worldview, share her values, love those stories, loved her outlook, loved her wit, her interest, her creativity. So 90% of success in writing, in a writing career, I think, is writing good work that appeals to a target audience. Focus your time on learning and improving your craft. That's your primary task, learning how to write well. I talked about the hurdles. If you don't get over that hurdle, your odds of succeeding down the road, no matter what your marketing gimmick or what the fad that comes along, your odds are seriously diminished. That, I think, is the key to developing what we're going to talk about later as a brand and your reputation as an author. And focusing on marketing ought to be a secondary or peripheral consideration until you've probably had maybe 3 or 4 books out. Once you have a series of books out, you can do a lot more with marketing. But until you get a series of books out, a number of books out, you probably should just be focusing on honing your craft and learning the things that you need to learn. Now, I said a series of books related by compelling characters, themes, voice, and or story world. A series of such books that are united by those things are going to improve your chances of having an enduring career. How do I know? Let me give you a little list. See if you recognize any of these names. Tarzan, Sherlock, Nancy Drew, Tom Swift, Miss Marple, Hercule Poirot, Doc Savage, John Carter, Perry Mason, James Bond, Harry Potter, Jason Bourne, Jack Reacher, Spencer, Stephanie Plum, Katniss Everdeen, Harry Bosch, Claire Randall, Mac Bolan, Mitch Rapp, Frodo and Bilbo Baggins. Need I go on? Or think of comic book characters. Or TV series. Series attract binge readers. You see, the reason that is commercially viable is that when you start with one series character, you're going to attract a certain following. Second book, those people who became followers of that story are going to buy the second book. But the second book is going to reach new people who are going to say, hey, this is a cool story. And then you find out that you've written another book. They go back and they buy the first book. You put out your third book. It attracts new people. The people who bought the first and second book are going to buy the third book. Then the people who buy the third book are going to say, hey, that's cool. They're going to go back and buy the first and second book. Lee Child seemed to he really had a fantastic career from the very beginning. His first book, Killing Floor, won all kinds of plaudits and so forth. He says his career, financially and in other ways, really didn't take off until it was about his 6th or 7th book. That surprised me because you'd see his books on the book stands and everything. But the fact of the matter is, this incremental thing after a while snowballs, and you reach a tipping point. And if you're really good and you happen to appeal to a wide group of readers, what happens after a certain point is that it snowballs and things get really big and it acquires a momentum of its own. I'm pleased that I discovered certain writers when nobody else had ever heard of them. And I was thrilled to see their careers take off. Thriller writer Daniel Silva, for example, I would have thought he was a phenomenal talent when I was reading very early books before anybody knew, before he was on the New York Times bestseller list. That same thing happened, where it snowballed with each new release, and now he's almost a guaranteed #1 New York Times bestseller. Another aspect of this, if you can write well and rapidly, you're ahead of the game. This is my big downfall. I can't write rapidly. I am slow as molasses in cranking out books. I've cranked out 2 books in 5 years. That's not good. Not if I want to continue to pay the mortgage. If I were able to write faster and crank these out, I am in the enviable and pathetic position of having people writing me almost every day saying, when's the next book coming out? When's the next book? These people are waiting for my books, and I'm the holdup. I'm the holdup. I could be making money right now. I'm leaving a lot of money on the table by not getting books out faster. If you can write well, and that's to underscore that, and quickly, you're going to, again, increase your chances. The second big hurdle point, be a pro in all aspects of writing, editing, production values, and marketing. You are competing against the best in the world. The best publishers, the best marketing departments, the best fellow authors. You're competing for eyeballs in the marketplace against extraordinary talent. That means that your production values, let's say you're self-publishing, your production values have to be as good as anything that's out there. If you have a book cover that looks amateurish and you're up there on Amazon or in Goodreads or even in a bookstore and you're up against the pros, their eyeballs are going to go right past yours and they're going to gravitate onto the professionals. Because people will say, this is a real book. And they'll look at yours and say, that looks pretty cheesy. Aim for the highest craftsmanship in your writing. Test your final manuscript on beta readers or writers groups. Test them, get feedback, try to improve them. If you self-publish, take time to do things right. Don't rush into publication. You want to have your book edited by somebody who knows what they're doing. Proofread. You want to get the formatting right. You want to make sure that there aren't all kinds of typos and glaring errors in the book, errors of fact, errors of any kind. You're in competition with the best. By the way, just an aside here for fiction writers. I don't know what the split is here. But for fiction writers, I have one commandment and one moral sin. The one commandment for fiction writers is you must do everything possible to get people down into your story world. Glom them in there, hold them in there, and never let up. Keep them turning page after page after page so that at the end of the book, you get fan mail that begins, I hate you because you kept me up till 4 o'clock in the morning and I was no good at work the next day. Or one that I got, and I swear I got this. A guy saying, I got really in trouble with my bride because I took your book on my honeymoon. And I went, yes! If he would rather be with me than his bride, all right. That was cool. Now, your job as a writer is to create that story world and that spell, cast that spell, and make it so vivid and so real that it supplants the world around them. And that the corollary is the mortal sin. The mortal sin is anything that you do that distracts the guy, the reader, the woman from your story world is a mortal sin. If it's a typo, if it's bad grammar, if you put a safety on a Glock, if you are showing off your literary skills and using fancy language, the reader's going to do this. He's going to go, oh, boy, that was clever. Boy, that was really interesting. Boy, that guy's really clever. He's out of your story world. Geez, I'm getting kind of hungry right now. I think you lost him. You're showing off broke the spell. Mortal sin. Do nothing to break the spell. Anyway, that was an aside. I wasn't planning to say that. So see, you just got something extra for this. Professional cover. I'll just send this around. It's self-explanatory. Here are some amateur covers and some professional covers. You can pick which ones are which. Professional cover. People do judge you by your cover, by your book cover, and they will decide quality based on book cover. You want simple, bold images, bold fonts, and an image on your cover that don't express your literary creativity. The cover is a marketing device. It is a marketing tool. It has to evoke the right genre, the right type of book. It has to be aimed at people, again, who are sharing your values, your story world, and so on. It's not some place for self-indulgence. If you're in this, if you think your cover is for self-indulgence purposes, save your self-indulgence if anywhere in the pages of the book. That's where you create your world. But the cover of your book should clearly and simply communicate what this book is about, what this genre is. The third hurdle, and even if I got to nothing else in this talk other than this one, this is the meat of what I want to try to communicate today. Marketing, to me, can be divided up into two segments. One is called positioning, and the other one is called branding, at least for marketing ebooks. I mean, marketing is a vast subject, and there's all kinds of things involved. But the two elements that I want to stress, two key elements of marketing that I think are most important to understand, are positioning and branding. Let me give you a little bit of a background on this before I go into exactly what that is. The best marketing is built on things that are intrinsically part of and unique to you and your work. I'm going to repeat that because it's huge. The best marketing is built on things that are intrinsically part of and unique to you and your work. That's a reiteration of what I said at the very beginning here. It's all about who you are, and it's all about what your work intrinsically is. What do I mean about you? I mean the unique aspects of your personality, background, skills, interests, values, and unique elements within your books, an original character, fresh subject matter, novel themes, An unusual setting, Middle Earth. The Star Wars world, whatever. A unique setting. Unusual plot structure. Remember the movie Memento? I thought that was so wildly clever, how that's just stood out in my mind. I didn't like the movie emotionally in terms of it was very downbeat and everything, but the plot structure was so incredibly creative and brilliant. The way they played with time sequencing in that thing. I said, wow, that's not been done before. That movie stood out. Your unique voice. If you were at that presentation earlier, you understand what I'm saying when I say the unique voice. Your expression of personality through language. How your personality comes out. By concentrating on this stuff strategically, you can both position your work and brand it, and establish a brand in the marketplace. Now, what do I mean by that? We all have a twofold problem in marketing our work. One is standing out from the crowd. There are millions and millions and millions of competing titles out there and competing authors, many of whom are quite good. Standing out in the middle of those millions is daunting. The second element is, even if you stand out, you've got to have something appealing. You know, you can stand out by being a jerk. You can stand out by being offensive. It's happening all over the political campaign today. I mean, if you want to stand out, yeah, you can stand out, but what's the brand? You see, positioning is distinguishing yourself in the marketplace. Distinguishing your work to stand out from the crowd. I drew this as an illustration. You want to be the X amid all the O's. Positioning is standing out. Branding is when you stand out, you're loved. Somebody out there loves you. Branding is about appealing to a certain group of people who share your values and attitudes in order to build your fan base. So the marketing we're going to be talking about involves both, and we're going to talk about how to enhance those. You can do both at once. I mentioned you don't define your readers demographically. Forget about that. That's not what you do. You don't aim broadly at everybody. You say, my book's for everybody. No, it's not. Everybody will not like your book. Think of your favorite book in the world, the one that you think is absolutely the best book. Now, go on Amazon and look at the reviews. I guarantee you there are one-star reviews on that book. Whatever the book is. I guarantee it's. Your book is not for everybody. Your work is not going to be for everybody. You are looking for people who believe what you believe. Here is an assignment for you. A fellow by the name of Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K, gave a talk at these TED conferences, TED. He has one out called Start With Why, W-H-Y. It's on YouTube. Google Simon Sinek, Start With Why, and go to the YouTube, or just search for those videos on YouTube. 18 minutes. Watch it. Then watch it again. Then take notes. Then watch it again until it sinks in. What he talks about is projecting your belief system, projecting your ideas, your worldview. People, he says, don't buy what you have to sell because they need it. They buy what you have to offer because they believe what you believe. Why do people like Macs more than PCs? There are people who like PCs, love PCs. I use a PC. You try to talk a Mac user, and anybody who deals with Apple, out of their, You can go and give all the specs in the world, all the specs that you want about that. You can't talk them out of it. There's no way you talk them out of it, because there's this emotional bond, and the emotional bond comes from a values bond. If you share the values of Apple's for the creative, the innovators, the mavericks, and all that sort of thing, you identify with all of that stuff, and that Mac on your desk isn't a computer. That's part of your identity. That becomes a symbol. How do you think Madison Avenue sells perfume? It's not. They're selling romance. They're not selling an odor. They're tying it to success. Certain car brands, you know. This is the Aston Martin, driven by James Bond, Inspector. You know, they're selling an image. And so what I'm saying is that people believe you are selling people your belief system. You're selling to people who believe what you want to believe, and that's how you get die-hard fans. And those die-hard fans will then spread out in the culture, and they will recommend your books to other people. Those die-hard fans, the ones that you have gone after and focused your marketing efforts on, they will become unpaid ambassadors for your work. They're going to go out in the world, and they're going to be Johnny Appleseeds about it. One of my big fans, a young lady who lives nearby here. She works at a fast food restaurant, and she is constantly, she's also an aspiring writer, so she's constantly asking for advice and tips and all that stuff, but she also passes out my business cards everywhere. She's at the Wendy's drive-thru just across the Bay Bridge, at the drive-thru window. It was yesterday, or the day before. Somebody comes through the drive-thru window with the radio speakers blaring, and it's the audiobook of Hunter. And she writes it up on her Facebook page. And I said, oh my gosh, that's unbelievable. I could never in a million years imagine, because, you know, the audiobook is not as big a seller as the ebooks. So I could not fathom that. And she, being the unpaid ambassador, tells the guy in the car, oh, do you know that, I know this guy. Do you know that his second book, Audible, is going to be coming out with an edition of Bad Deeds within a few months? She's selling this guy, and this happens all the time. I've got a lady at the Island Athletic Club on Kent Island, one of the delightful lady who's one of the people who mans the desk there. Her name's Peaches, and she loves my stuff. And she puts flying tackles on people who are coming in the door and tells them, "You got to read these books." You know, that is worth its weight in gold. That third-party validation. So when you aim at people who believe what you believe and who are focused on your why, those people will go out and proclaim your value to the world. And you cannot buy that kind of advertising. You don't have enough money to get that kind of advertising. So, how are the mechanics? What are the mechanics of this? You start out by asking yourself, what do I want the world to know about me in my books? Find a catchy, distinctive concept. One or two words that sums up you and your beliefs and values, your personal why. That concept should represent the authentic you, as we've discussed. It ideally should be framed in such a way as to distinguish you from your competitors. You're looking for a differentiating concept, something that makes you different. I'm going to go over that in a little bit in more detail, but let me just continue for a moment. Next, you try to define a new category for your own work, a sub-category of existing categories. Say you're writing romance. I did not know that there was such a thing, or could be such a thing, as dinosaur porn. As they said in Galaxy Quest, oh, that's so wrong, you know. You know, But you talk about a subcategory of romance. Somebody apparently dominates that category. I don't want to know that person. All right? But somebody's out there who's carved out their own little niche in the marketplace. That might stick in your mind for later on. But let me give you an example from the genre that I work in, thrillers. Back in the 50s and 60s, sort of the first big thriller writer was known for generic thrillers was Alistair MacLean. Guns at Night, Never Own, Ice Station Zebra, Where Eagles Dare. He wrote sort of generic thrillers. A lot of them started out as military thrillers, but then he moved on to spy thrillers and all kinds of thrillers. Then you had other thriller writers come along. Ian Fleming, spy thrillers, subcategory of the generic thriller. He focused on a certain kind of a spy character with James Bond. Donald Hamilton broke off from that. Okay, he has a different kind of a spy than James Bond. His Matt Helm character was a rough, tough guy who was tough as nails, middle-aged and everything, not this suave, sophisticated James Bond character. So he carved out a different, more hard-boiled spy hero. Then you had Robert Ludlum, who came up with conspiracy spy stories. Then you had Tom Clancy, who came up with techno-thrillers. Then you had Vince Flynn, who came up with political thrillers. And it goes on and on and on. Thomas Harris, serial killer thrillers. Dan Brown, thrillers that are rooted in religious symbolism and mythology and history. Lee Child, he has this wandering drifter, knight-errant character. Every one of these people, C.J. Lyons, she writes what she calls, in her brand, she uses an explicit branding device, thrillers with heart. Each one of these people has carved out a little niche, a distinctive niche in the marketplace. And what I'm suggesting for you to do is think in terms of your distinction. How do you stand out? You distinguish yourself. How do you distinguish yourself? You emphasize the things that set you apart, the things that are unique to you, unique to your work. You don't hide that. You don't try to sound like, I'm a thriller writer. Boy, I'd love to have Vince Flynn's thing, so I'm gonna say, just like Vince Flynn. Or, I'm gonna be just like Lee Child. You know what? People are gonna buy Vince Flynn and Lee Child. They don't want somebody, just like them. They want the real deal. So, what you've got to do is carve out something that's distinctively you. My passion, since I was a little kid, I had a passion for justice. Ever since I read Batman comics, ever since I watched The Lone Ranger on TV. I'm dating myself. So what do I do now? Well, my tagline is, I write vigilante crime stories. And my tagline for my website is the vigilante author. If you Google vigilante and author, those two words together, I'm the first thing that comes up on Google. My hero, Dylan Hunter, I have carved out from all the other kind of vigilantes, crusading vigilante. He is a vigilante crusader, or sometimes I refer to him as a modern Zorro. A modern Zorro character. That's different. It's different from the other vigilantes. You think of the guy in Death Wish, played by Charles Bronson, the movies, that vigilante character. Or you think of Dexter, who's a psychopath vigilante character. It's all these. My guy is and not only that, he's a romantic crusading vigilante. He's got a girlfriend. He's madly in love with his girlfriend's madly in love with him, which distinguishes him from all of the vigilante and tough guy thriller heroes for whom there are two kinds of women in the world. The one is the weekend fling, the interchangeable, dispensable blonde girl. The other one is the love of his life who gets killed in chapter 5 and sets him off on a rage of revenge throughout the rest of the series.
Poor guy.
Those are the two kinds of women that appear in thrillers. The idea of a long-term romantic relationship, and you ask yourself the question, okay, how can a woman sustain a relationship with a man who goes running around killing people? poses a really interesting question, doesn't it? And I'm forever solving that from book to book. Especially since they're now engaged. In book 2, they got engaged. Now, where do I go with that? Well, you got to buy book 3 to find out.
We got 4 or 5 more books to go for it.
That's right. It's going to be the longest engagement. Milk it, boy, milk it. No.
Do you think you could increase the rapidity that you put it out at if you just kill her off in chapter 5? And
Kill her off in chapter 5 and be able to crank out the books. Yeah, it really adds to the complications, and the plotting, it takes forever. Anyway, now, once you've kind of come up with your distinctive characteristics and your defining issue, you expand it into your biography, you expand it into product descriptions, you reiterate the same message again and again on your business cards, on your letterheads, on your image, the physical images and stuff like that. You do everything you can to reinforce that distinguishing characteristic. And you beat that to death in the marketplace. Why? In an overcrowded marketplace, people are confused. You're bombarded with all kinds of information. You've got millions and millions of competitors for attention. In order to reach your kind of people, you're going to have to tell them who you are. And you're going to have to say that one thing over and over and over and over and over and over again in a million different ways. I have I'll give you 2 examples from my biography that I put online. I used to have the kind of biography. It was Robert Bidinotto had a successful career as a nonfiction writer. He edited this magazine. He won that award. Blah 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 all the way. And all that thing. He was born in western Pennsylvania. Born on a mountaintop in Tennessee. Killed a bar when he was only 3. No, I had the same kind of resume everybody else does. A biographical thing. Now my short one, the 21-word edition of this is Robert Bidinotto is author of Hunter, a Wall Street Journal best-selling vigilante justice thriller, and his award-winning sequel, Bad Deeds. Get that message in. The long version. It's up on my Amazon site. I'm Robert Bidinotto, author of Hunter, #1 Kindle best-selling thriller, and its acclaimed sequel, Bad Deeds. And then I give a line about some of the other things I've done. Second paragraph. Ever since I watched The Lone Ranger and read Batman comics as a little kid in the 1950s and 60s, I've been deeply moved by the moral concept of justice. And I go on and elaborate about that. Why this has meant something to me, and that it was my main theme throughout my nonfiction career and all of the kind of journalism that I did. And then paragraph 3, the quest for justice is a central theme of my fiction writing too. Like me, the hero of the Dylan Hunter thriller series is motivated by his passion for justice. He finds that he just cannot walk away when there's an injustice against people he cares about, and it goes on a little bit. And then I say that this is why I refer to him as the new face of justice and why I call myself the vigilante author. If exciting tales of justice are your thing, then like thousands of other readers, I hope you will enjoy my Dylan Hunter thrillers. It's not a traditional biography at all. It's not, and I wish I could tell you that I came up with this concept by myself, but no. I got this from Michael J. Sullivan, who is a fantasy author, very successful fantasy author. His various books have now sold something like 750,000 copies. He's probably one of the most successful fantasy authors that you don't know. But he writes great stuff. And Michael came up with this, the Simon Sinek thing and everything else connected with it. This works. He knows how to brand, and he has branded himself brilliantly. Now, you expand your why, that why of yours into biographies, as I did, elevator pitches for your books, product descriptions. Book description for Hunter. 2 people passionately in love, but each hides a deadly secret. 3rd line. He is a crusading vigilante on a violent quest for justice. So the message is right there. And then she is tracking this unknown assassin sworn to stop him. Neither knows the truth about the other. Neither knows that a predator is hunting them both. That's the hook for the book in the promo. I repeat that thing on Amazon, on the book cover, everywhere I go, because I want that same message reinforced. In Bad Deeds, the book jacket, I spent weeks refining these things down to this stuff. You have to do that too. You have to focus on your messaging and on getting the why, getting your why out there. The vigilante is back, first line. He sought peace and the tranquility of nature, but can he tame the violence in his own nature? At a cabin in the Allegheny National Forest, Dylan Hunter and Annie Wood seek to heal the wounds from their ordeal at the hands of a twisted psychopath. And to build a life together, Dylan promises to abandon his violent ways. But ideological zealots and Washington's political elites have conspired to terrorize and plunder the hardworking locals. These victims have no protector against the bad deeds of the powerful and privileged, except for one man, a man as ruthless and violent as they, a man committed to absolute justice, because Dylan Hunter cannot walk away, not even if it cost him the woman he loves. Again, the theme reiterated, I am trying to reach the people. I don't care about people who are interested in cozy mysteries. I'm not trying to reach the people who are interested in just romance. I'm looking for a certain kind of reader who shares my worldview, and I'm trying to project that into everything that I do. So, think like your target readers in everything that you do, all of your marketing. Find out where they hang out. Find out what they're interested in. Go there. Participate online where they are. Those kinds of people. People who share your interests. Go to the places where you have your own interests. Participate. And then you can drop once in a while, oh yeah, and I've written these books you might be interested in. But you don't spam them. You don't go after them. You don't grab them by the lapels and say, read my book, read my book. You just share who you are. You share what your books are about. I'm going to skip the categorization of number 5 for the moment, because it's a more technical thing. It's about how you categorize things online on Amazon, and that's mainly for self-published authors. If you're a self-published writer, you can pick my brain about that afterwards, but you want to categorize your work where it belongs, and you want to go as deep as you possibly can in the categories on Amazon and on Goodreads and on these other places, Barnes & Noble, to categorize your book in a subcategory that best represents it, number 1, and number 2, that's not that populated with competing titles. If you want to stand out from the pack, it's better to be a big fish in a little pond. If you go into a category like fiction, nonfiction. Oh, I wrote a novel, and you categorize your book under fiction, you got like 1 billion titles that you're competing with. Okay, what kind of fiction? Well, there are novels, novellas, short stories, plays, scripts, poetry. Where are you going to put it? You put it under the one that's most obvious. In my case, it was novels. Genre. There's genre fiction, like on Amazon, and then there's literary fiction. I'm in the genre fiction. So I want to go in the genre. Thrillers. Okay, what kind of genres? There are historical, romance, mystery, fantasy, sci-fi, western, thrillers. Obviously, I would go under a thriller. But what kind of thriller? You don't stop there. You don't say, okay, I've written a thriller, and you stick your book in that category. What kind of thriller? Spy, military, political, conspiracy, techno, legal, medical, psychological, crime. I write crime thrillers. So I'm down in there. I find you can position your book in the right category. But even there are all kinds of crime books. There's capers, murder, noir, serial killers, organized crime. Oh, wait, vigilante. Do you know that when I put mine in, I did this talk in September of 2015, there were millions of titles all over Amazon. There's like 30 million book titles on Amazon. 30 million? That was as of last September. It's probably much more than that now. You know how many ebook vigilante thrillers there were on Amazon in ebooks at that time? 602. Where am I best positioned to be published? So that's what I mean about strategic categorization. Pricing, I only say one thing about pricing. You want to be reasonable about your pricing. And if you're pricing ebooks, for example, you price them between $2.99 and $4.99 until you get a big reputation. Then you can kind of sell them for what you want. But $2.99 and $4.99, and that will give you a 70% royalty share, which is pretty nice. If you have multiple books in a series, I suggest to you that you look into selling your first book, or pricing your first book in the series at a really competitive price to suck people into your series. Either set it permanently free, or price it maybe at 99 cents. People who get hooked on your first book in your series will go on to buy the other ones. So that's strategic pricing. Carefully craft compelling teasers for product descriptions and promo materials. I have a whole bunch of bad examples, but I'm going to give you a good one. Here is a fantastic teaser. Imagine that you're a thriller reader and you ran into this for Alex Berenson's The Faithful Spy, and you just saw this book copy. Years ago, John Wells was an all-American boy from Montana. Now he is roaming the mountains of Pakistan as a member of Al-Qaeda. After a decade away from home, he despises the United States for its decadence. He hates America's shallow, mindless culture of vice and violence. He is a devout Muslim. He is a brave warrior for Allah. He is a CIA operative, and he is coming home. You go,
Wow.
whoa. That is brilliant. That is just brilliant writing. When I read that, I said, hats off, almost never take this hat off. Hats off to the writer of that ad copy. That was phenomenal as far as a teaser. The key to a good teaser, it's a teaser. You do not tell people everything. You do not give away plot points. You don't give them, you don't satisfy curiosity. You arouse curiosity in a teaser. The whole point of writing a teaser is to get people curious enough to hit that buy button. That's what you want. You want people to be intrigued enough, and then you shut up. You provide them insufficient but tantalizing information. Insufficient but tantalizing. That's what you do with a teaser. And there are all kinds of things about how you go about doing that are available. Again, I refer you to my website. Number 8, establish personal, helpful relationships with your readers via social media. Don't spam. Don't grab them by the lapels. Don't talk about your books all the time. You set up a website and a blog, which I recommend wholeheartedly. Give them regular, new, helpful content. If you're a thriller writer, interview thriller authors. Talk about thrillers. Review other thriller books. Talk about the new thriller movies that came out. Give them value. Think like a trader, not a taker. A lot of people have a thing about sales and marketing because they have a negative view of it because they think somebody's out there trying to get my money from me. They're grabbing me by the lapels and they want my money. And they have a standoffish thing. No, give them value. They will come to you if you give them something valuable. If you approach, and you will have no problem, if you think you're really providing value to these folks, you're not going to feel bad when they come to you and ask you about your books. And you won't have any trouble talking about your books and your work. But if you have the mindset of a trader that you're imparting value to them, I think that psychology will be a whole lot better for you. One of the things you must do with your website, I would use MailChimp, M-A-I-L, chimp, like chimpanzee, .com, to establish an email list. You want to harvest the email addresses of your fans. You want people who go to your website, or people whom you send to your website, or people who buy your books to sign up for your mailing list. Why? Because when you have a new release to come out, you want to hit those people first. They are your most likely and most loyal buyers. A mailing list, all of the successful self-published authors and published authors that I know of, they really go whole hog in establishing and utilizing a mail list, and also communicating regularly with your readers. Tell them, show them, have them be the first ones to see the covers, the new covers. Have them get a sample chapter or sample chapters of the new book. Run contests and prizes for them. Take care of your fans and use the mail list, this mailing list in order to do that. I'll ignore a few other things here that I could say about that to go to number 9. Encourage satisfied readers to leave honest reviews on Amazon and Goodreads. Don't beg for reviews from family and friends. Don't swap positive reviews with other authors. These are no-nos. They will come back to bite you. You don't want to do that. Start with your beta readers. Say, when you're done, if you like the book, if you like it, give it a review when it comes out. Give it an Amazon or Goodreads review. Same thing when somebody writes you and says, I just read your book, I loved it. Oh, that's fantastic, thank you so much, I really appreciate it. Converse with them a little bit and then say, you know, it would be really helpful to me if you share your enjoyment of the book with other readers on Amazon, if you go to Amazon or Goodreads and leave a review. That's perfectly legit. Once they've already come to you and told you that they like your book. Finally, I'm going to just say that utilize Amazon's promotional tools and consider outside ads. I have a bunch of stuff on my blog about that. I won't say anything about that now. I'm going to be here for the rest of the day, such as it is, and if anybody wants to corner me about any of these other things, but I think we've run out of the hour here now. And I thank you very much for attending. You had other options here. And I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ken. Great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Howdy. Can you get that? Okay. This is the little camera. I get all of you folks, all those smiling faces here. You just become immortalized. You realize that you're going to be on